Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Be Live with the Big Fella. And tonight's special Bank Holiday Monday episode of Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod. As ever, nothing is ever the same here. So actually, we've got four blokes, we've got our mini ball, and we've got no Bod. Bod is dogged down. Took him out a little bit of walking and fizzing things today. And he's not been a well dog, so hopefully we'll have him back on Thursday. More about that episode then. But we're doing a special tonight, and the special tonight is all about Ulster Rugby. Now there has been. I'm going to look at the current situation and the future requirements. Before we do so, as ever, we'll do our welcomes and our intros and our shout outs. I'll start with the shout out to begin with today. Before we go into the meat of everything about Ulster Rugby tonight, we'd like to welcome everybody who's watching. So, Rianne, George, and another George there. Thanks very much. If you've got any questions, and stick them up there in the panel, who are an expert panel. We have spared absolutely no expense getting the very best of Ulster Rugby to come and speak about their beloved Ulster. And in fact, we've spared no expense whatsoever. So we look forward to seeing them in a minute. A shout out, okay? There was a new Irish Rugby forum formed this week. There are lots of Irish Rugby forums, but this one's called the Irish Rugby Shed. And it's formed by some of the team who were Irish Rugby Banter. Rugby Banter still going, and some of the guys and girls at formed Irish Rugby Shed as well. And that will so have a look at that as well. I often get asked, are there too many forums out there? I don't think there are. I think different forums, groups, pages. It's a bit like us, Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod. You're looking for different things. Everybody caters for something else. So have a look. My advice, people, have a look around, see what you think. But have a look at, for the team at Irish Rugby Shed on Facebook and see what you think to their group as well. Okay, moving on. Welcomes. So like I said, no expense spared tonight to bring you the very best of knowledge and exceptional ability when we're talking about Ulster Rugby. First of all, an Ulster man, but currently living in Scotland. We welcome back again, Ben Slater.
Hey, Joe, thanks.
How are you, buddy? You well?
Yeah, good, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Come on. Right. And also joining us tonight, a Geordie who has been living in Ulster. He's been at Ulster University for the last couple of years, and 2 weeks ago moved back to the UK. And so that's where we haven't seen much of him in the last few weeks. But we're great to have him back on the show talking about Ulster Rugby tonight. Christian Ross. Christian, how are you, buddy? Are you settled?
Yes, I am. It's been 26 degrees here today, so it's been very warm. So I'm melting, and I'm not even sure where I live now. To be honest, I've moved that many times now. I really have, but yeah, settling in and feels good. So missing Northern Ireland though.
Well, okay. It's good to have you back to talk about anyway, buddy. Yeah, you're looking well. And clearly, obviously, there's been lots of debate, discussion, conjecture, and arguments about all things that have been going on in the province so far this season. The man who will no doubt throw a few cats amongst the pigeons tonight is from the north of Ireland, but currently the rector at the parish of Carrickmacross, which is in County Monaghan, which, as we know, is part of the ancient province of Ulster anyway. The very Reverend Colin McConaughey. Colin, welcome. Great to have you on at last, buddy.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. Oh, I've lost my agenda. Here's the thing. There has been a plethora of Ulster players retiring. The great Robbie Dyack is returning to South Africa after, I think it's 10 years. We've got a newly appointed coach, McFarlane, coming in. We'll talk about that later. And lots and lots of players. There was the sort of core case, which has affected everybody involved on Split of Community. Unfortunately, 2 players losing their contract as a result, and lessons that clearly should be learned by us all. A plethora of, like I say, of Ulster players who are retiring, and it's an awful lot. So I heard just this evening, heard that prop Rodney RU has been let go. Andrew Trimble, Tommy Bowes retiring. Who else? Paul Marshall. amongst others. And that's a big amount for me for a province like Ulster, when the heart of your club is ripped out by those number of players who not only retiring, the two have gone, and some have been released as well. So there's an awful lot there, and indeed, actually, Sparky the mascot is retiring at the end of the season. So dear me, could it get any worse for Ulster? Is it as bad as everybody has said? Bod, great Brian O'Driscoll, as opposed to Bod the dog, has classed it as a basket case. Personally, I believe he was said out of context, but we'll see what the three panelists have got to say. So, guys, you're absolutely welcome. Let's start off with Ulster then and now, and we'll ask Colin to start us off talking about Ulster Rugby.
Well, Joe, if we're going to start with Rodney, are you retiring or leaving Ulster? I'm afraid it can only be up from here. Sorry, Rodney, but I suppose we go back to the good old days. It's hard to believe now that not so long ago this was an amateur sport and the provinces were playing in front of 5 men on a bod or a dog. There wasn't too many about in those days, and those, I suppose, were the Ulster glory years. We have to say, 26 inter-pro titles. In the 80s and 90s, 10 inter-pro titles in a row. The real glory days, I suppose, for us as Ulster fans, although, if we're honest, probably not too many of us were there to see it in those days. There wasn't too many about, but I suppose it was no surprise from that when the game went professional, Ulster were actually the first Irish province to win the Heineken Cup, to conquer Europe, 1989, a great year that we'll all remember in Lansdowne Road against US Colomers, wherever they have gone to, no one knows. But Ulster, of course, set the benchmark in Europe. That great team led by, of course, by David Humphreys, a great number 10. I'm sure we'll come back to number 10s, no doubt, later in the show. He's a great man for us. Players like Andy Ward and coached by Harry Williams. It was amazing to look through that team today and realise that all 15 plus replacements were all Irish qualified, which doesn't often happen too much nowadays. And I suppose if we think of Ulster, that could maybe be where we possibly started to go wrong, because after that there was a bit of success in the following years. There was a Celtic League win, rather dramatic Celtic League win with a Johnny Saxon-style drop goal winner in the last minute, clinching the Celtic League for us. And I suppose after that initial period, up until the start of the millennium, Ulster were going strong and things seemed to be going rather well. Alan Solomons took over as coach for a while, and actually we went 3 years unbeaten at Ravenhill, which is some feat by any standards. Of course, winning the Celtic League, some massive results in Europe, hammering the Leicester Tigers 33-0 at one point in January of 2004. And of course, we won that inaugural Celtic Cup in 2003. So those days, things were going well. And Ulster were sort of one of the major players in that early Celtic League. But then 2006 hit, and the decline sort of really did kick in. And I suppose we're complaining now about the state of Ulster Rugby, but for 4 or 5 seasons, we were really propping up the Celtic League. Things were not going well at all. Mark McCall, who came in as coach, he resigned in 2007, 2008, in what was a terrible season, doing terrible in Europe. We were sitting bottom of the Celtic League. Things really were not going for Ulster at all in those years. And being Ulster went through a number of coaches. Matt Williams came in for a while. He managed to finish a magnificent 8th in the Celtic League out of 10. So that wasn't so good either. And things really were a struggle for those years. But it wasn't really until 2010 that, I suppose, for many of us, the crowd started coming. A certain young man by the name of Ruan Pienaar was brought in, and Ulster's revival began. It was a decent season that year. 2010, 2011 was a successful season in many ways, reaching the quarter-final of the Heineken Cup and coming third in the Celtic League after years of struggle. Then 2011, 2012, probably our last big year when we beat Edinburgh in the semi-finals, the European Cup, only to move on to the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, and we'll not mention that result or that opposition, but it was a bad day at the office. But we were once again knocking at the top table in Europe. But with anything Ulster, it wasn't easy, and things didn't go as planned because Brian McLaughlin was then moved on as head coach despite reaching a European final. Disorder in the dressing room, possibly. Religious beliefs, possibly. Who knows? But Brian McLaughlin was forced to move on. Mark Anscombe then came in as head coach. And again, the success was reasonably good. But for me, I suppose, one of the moments which I think started our slump, Ben Mayer may not agree with me, others may disagree, but was that quarter final against Saracens. I really think we could have done something big that season. Jared Payne, an early red card. The crowd go mad, as you can expect in Ravenhill. They make a bit of noise. We lost narrowly in a match we could have even won with 14 men. And for me, that was the moment I think those players sort of felt they just couldn't go any further. And I don't really believe we recovered from that, despite a few semi-final, final appearances in the Pro 12 as it was then. We just never really came back from that. Of course, Les Kiss was brought in as the great white hope from the IRFU. That really didn't work, if we're being completely honest, for whatever reason. Motivational skills seemed to be lacking. We seemed happy to lose away from home. Jonah Gibbs was brought in as a bit of a backup to Kiss. Kiss was fired. Gibbs is leaving us to go South Africa. And here we are facing a playoff for European qualification against Ospreys in 2 weeks. Situation looks dire. It may be dire, but I think there are signs of hope. But if we can only go back to the amateur days, we'd probably be all right.
Colin, listen, thank you very much for that. I'm going to bring in a couple of comments straight away. A brilliant bit of background because I think it sets the scene. George Armstrong. Sorry, I've clicked on the wrong thing there, George. George Armstrong. Should be interesting. I have a feeling any anti-Logan sentiments will be blocked. Not at all, buddy. This is not certain other sites. This is Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod. And if somebody's got a genuine comment, we positively encourage respectful comments to be made to have your point. We don't block anything. If anybody gets abusive or anything like that, then clearly we would block anybody. But this isn't that sort of thing. This is where we want to discuss all things rugby. And what is the issue tonight is about Ulster Rugby. And is it as bad as people say? So let's keep everything respectful. But George, not at all. We've got no intention. People want to speak about the chairman, Shane Logan. They're quite right to do so because it's the supporters who support the club, not the chairman who does anything, has all the say to that. George Jackson, another George. George, hello. Good evening. Welcome. Rianne, welcome. Mexican wave. It's a Mexican wave. Crazy girl. Oscar, thanks very much. Dorothy, is there still big topic, but think there is a big future there? Yeah, there is. And I'm going to, it just leads us on, Oscar, to, where they're currently at the moment. Dorothy McKay, not seeing or hearing anything. Dorothy, I hope you are now. Everybody else, I think, seems to be okay. Here we go. Graham Brown, Logan out. Well, look, give us your reasons why you believe he should be out. Graham, and we stick them up. As much, another one from Graham. As much as Cunningham has said, we need youth. For some unknown reason, he's getting rid of all the experience. I'm not sure whether he is actually getting rid of all the experience or whether it's just, the players make the choice when they want to retire. But I'll let the guys come back to that because I don't want to be any sort of scene with any blue-tinted D4 type glasses on tonight because this is all about Softum and Softu and stuff like that. And a couple of little dates. 1999, of course, Tommy Johnson for not 1989. That's obviously what Colin meant, 99. And there we go. Cool. So, right. Let's get my agenda back. Right. Colin set the scene for us on where we are. So the next question for me now, as an outsider, is have things gone wrong, or is it merely a cyclical change? Is that yours? All clubs, all teams go through cycles. Colin said, 2006 to 2010, there was a bit of a lean period. Before that, there was the halcyon glory days. After that, since, Ruben Pinnock came in, things were building and building, and now it seems to have sort of dropped back a little bit. I often wonder sometimes for me whether Ulster were the nearly men, get to semi-finals and finals, but never really sort of quite make it. But is it merely just timing, the court case, the guys going, 4 or 5 of the core centre world-class players they are for me, the Tommy Bowes, the Andrew Trimbles, the Marshalls, the Robbie Dyaks, all people like this who are now retiring or going or have been released. Ben, what's your thoughts? Is it just everything's happened at once in the season and it's come to a head, or is there more of a malaise within Ulster Rugby?
Joe, I think the first thing to say is that the expectation at Ulster Rugby amongst Ulster Rugby themselves and the fans has always been exceptionally high. And we set high standards for what we want our team to achieve. Brian O'Driscoll, as well as describing the province as a basket case recently, also said that Ulster really frustrate him as a team because we should be doing better than what we are. Look, Colin kind of hit the nail on the head there when he said about moving from the amateur to the professional era. And Ulster were one of the first clubs to do that, but everyone else has caught up. Ulster this season in the Pro 14 have played 21 games, won 12, drew 2 and lost 7. If we had beaten Munster in the recent draw that we had, we would have a better record than Munster in the Pro 14 this season. Munster have won 13, drawn 1 and lost 7, I think, or something like that. So we would have a better record than them. We scored 538 points this season, 68 tries. Our issue this season is we've conceded 61. Only Cheetahs, Zebra, Dragons and Kings have conceded more tries than us. And that's really damaged us. With bad loss away to Zebra at the start of the season, 27-23, intercept try. We get thumped by Connacht away. And then during the Six Nations, we had a really bad run of 3 games, Edinburgh, Scarlets, Cardiff. Edinburgh beat us with a Duncan Weir drop goal 2 minutes into injury time. And that finished our season really for us there. Look, we've had issues off the pitch this year. It's been well documented. But I think if we're purely talking about on the pitch stuff, I mean, I know we can't take away the off the pitch stuff. It's not been a horrendous season. I mean, Champions Cup, we thumped Harlequins 52-24. We beat La Rochelle at home. Our record in the Champions Cup was 1-4, lost 2. Didn't go through from the group stages. But Racing are playing in the Champions Cup final on Saturday, and their group stage results, 1-4, lost 2. They just got more bonus points than us. We are coming to the end of an era with players leaving. We need to bring more through. There's been a lot of talk about the academy as well. We've had an Irish under-20s team that saw 9 Ulstermen in the squad. 7 out of the 15 started against Scotland were Ulster. So, I don't want to compare us or set us, but nobody's talking about Munster being in a horrendous situation. And Munster in a playoff, potentially for final of the Pro 14, but there were 2 Munstermen in that under-20s. We were close to beating them a couple of weeks ago, which would have given us better results in the Pro 14 than Munster. I think, look, Munster have high expectations as well. I'm not saying they don't, of course they do, but I think all the off-pitch stuff has really deflected this season. And we've had a couple of poor results. We've had a couple of poor performances. But I think it's all just been magnified in the Goldfish Bowl of Ulster Rugby this year. And I think we need to see change. We're going to see a lot of change. It's been forced on Ulster Rugby. We're going to see a lot of new signings. We've seen 3 already come in. We've got a lot of retirement, so there's a lot of scope for change. Change at the top, I think, is needed as well in the structure. I hope our new coach comes in and is allowed to put his stamp on the team. So I think it's an exciting time for Ulster Rugby. Let's get the season over with. It's gone, it's past. I'm looking forward to next season. I think it'll be good.
Cool. got a load of comments coming in tonight, which is really good. So, Christian, I'm going to turn to you now, but a good one that Mark Hunter, Ben Mann, just said about, for me being serial underachievers. Serial underachievers came up against a great Leinster team in 2012 and haven't really kicked on since then. Plenty of talent and potential, but haven't lived up to it. I think absolutely that's spot on for me. So cheers for that, Mark. It's almost like Ulster for me are the Irish version of Clement Verne, who have always been thereabouts. The great point you raised, Ben, there is Munster. Munster haven't played that well this season. They did one moment of genius against Toulon that put them through, and then they didn't turn up for the first 25-30 minutes and left it far too late against Racing. And yet nobody's saying anything when the legendary Axel, God rest his soul, was going through a lean patch and they brought a man in. The players, some players had gone, some players really weren't standing up and doing what they were meant to be doing, and yet there wasn't the same furore as there seems to be about Ulster. And I think some of the results you've had this year are fantastic, and I think the unfortunate court case has and lots of other things have queered the pitch a little bit. But on the management side, I believe everything is led from the top. And I think one great coach can put a team of individuals together and bring them together. But Christian, Messrs. Cunningham and Logan, do you think there's time for a change there? Do you think it's an outdated way that they're running Ulster that's having a knock-on effect down through the coaches to the players, and that's had an effect as well? What's your thoughts on the chairman and the upper management level?
Yeah, well, I mean, he needs to. I think Logan needs to go. I think that's been clear for a few years now. I think the problem that we have is that a lot of fans think this season have seemed to have sugarcoated it. Personally, I think the season's been a shambles. The last couple of years have been really, really disappointing. I like Mark's comment. Luckily, actually, I have the pleasure of knowing Mark, and he was right. Ulster have been the nearly men for so long, but the problem now is that Ulster is so far behind the rest of the provinces that it's laughable. We can look at Munster, but at the end of the day, Munster have ground out results, and Munster have got, as much as they haven't won, trophies, that they've got a bit more to show for it. And where Ulster Rugby going now? I mean, even Connacht have won the league, in the last few years, and as much as I think they probably overachieved when they did win it, it just shows you how far Ulster are behind. In terms of coaching, I never really thought much of Les Kiss. I think a lot of fans were, saying, "Well, give him a chance." I think he had his chance. In terms of the likes of Mark Anscombe, again, but it seems rather unusual that Brian McLaughlin, who was an ex-PE teacher, or who went to become a PE teacher after he played for 1 or 2, I can't remember exactly, but. He did more for Ulster. He did more for Ulster in that season than Anscombe or Kiss did in the time that they were there. So I mean, there's obviously change needed. But yeah, I mean, for me, I can't sugarcoat it. I think this season has been shambles, and I think people have become disinterested. I don't think they've become disinterested because Ulster aren't winning. I think they became disinterested because it's just basically water just. It's a basket case. Who would want the job? Obviously, McFarlane's taking it, but it's a poison chalice almost. And it also makes you wonder, if the IRFU, obviously, which they are in charge of all the provinces, then is it a case of neglect from the IRFU? Personally, I don't think it is. I think it's Logan as head honcho, and I think he seems to just be. I think it became almost sort of a what he says goes to a certain degree.
Okay, we're getting obviously there's again loads of comments in there. One from Graham Brown, a number from Graham Brown. So Graham, I'll stick a couple of yours up, buddy, because I want you to. I like people to justify the comments I'm making. So from Logan. from when Logan came in, we've gone backwards. He went through coaches like Hot Dinners. Logan promised world-class rugby. Indeed, he did. We are arguably the fourth in Ireland. This season has been a shambles from start to finish. The court case injuries and Ulster Rugby losing touch or not caring about their fans. There's some very good points there. Because if you're a fan and you're not seeing things in a positive way, and you're not seeing the province or the club that you love so much, working together, and I think it can start to fall apart that way. Graham, again, unbelievable that you compare the two teams. What, Ulster and Munster? Do you want to clarify that one, Graham? I'm quite happy to compare Ulster with Munster and what they've both been going through in the last 2 years, because I think it's easily comparable, because we're talking about Irish rugby. And as we come on to more questions, you'll understand where that's leading into. Oscar Trainer, great point, Oscar. Bar the court case, surely the management structure could and should have been aware of players leaving and retiring and having a succession plan in place for these players. Absolutely. Colin, succession plans, every organisation, you're in the chairs, buddy. Everybody has a succession plan from the day you come in. From the time I was a youngster, I was always taught when you take over a job, start your succession plan straight away and look at who you want to be coming through. I'm sure some of the players like, Trimble, Bow and Marshall, etc., have all decided to, and Dyack have all decided not, overnight to leave. But there doesn't seem to be, for that core group of top players, the players they're bringing in, Marty Moore's coming in as a prop, Jody Murphy's coming in, and but it's not much, is it? So do you think they've lost? You've lost an opportunity there by not planning correctly?
For me, I suppose the big problem at Ulster Rugby is we tend to react, I suppose, to be proactive. We knew the court case was coming. The dogs in the street knew that Jackson and Olding were going to disappear at some point from the team. We went into last season with Paddy Jackson as the only 10 at the province. We didn't react last summer when Pinar left, who was our backup 10. So we entered last season with only Paddy Jackson, who everyone knew, if we're being totally honest, that something was coming and something was going to happen. So there was no reaction there to get in another 10. And I suppose you can say the same thing is kind of happening now. I think the Paul Marshall one is probably a bit of more circumstance in the family situation with his young son. That's probably forced Paul Marshall's hand. Trimble, was he going to go at the end of this season? I think perhaps injury and lack of form. He's decided himself that he'd go. Tommy Bowe, we knew was going. Dyack. I suppose the one is Piatai, who we always knew was only staying for 2 years. Even if Ulster had won the European Cup in the last 2 years, Piatai would have been away for the next paycheck. He's honest enough about himself that he needs to make money for his family. So we knew Piatai was going. There's been no move to replace that. Was it the coaching situation? Kiss is gone. Do we start signing players with no head coach? But again, it looks like we're chasing our tail. We're always chasing our tail. We're not stepping out in front of being proactive. But then we have, I suppose, if we go back to Chris's point about Mr. Logan, I think it's a bit harsh to say we're the fourth team now in Ireland because we finished miles above Connacht. So no disrespect to Connacht, but we're still miles ahead of them, in all honesty, on the pitch. But we have a chief executive who was seen all over the place in those years when Pinar came in, when we were going well. Mr. Logan was turning up at everything. You couldn't keep him away from fans. And as soon as things go wrong, he disappears. And that's, I suppose, part of the problem with the fans. Your view of the court case, the right or wrong, that doesn't really matter. For me, the biggest wrong this season was when the season ticket holders had their open nights, Shane Logan couldn't appear. But a YouTube video was released on the day of the England-Ireland match in which he answers his own questions and tells us how wonderful Ulster Rugby is. A chief executive has to be seen in the hard times and the good. And again, it's this idea of not being proactive, it's being reactive. And that's where Logan has really let the fans down and disappearing. I suppose when the hard times hit, he's not to be seen. He's seen at all the corporate events, but not seen talking to the fans. I don't think it's as bad as some people are letting on. I think there is hope there. There's hope on the pitch. I think we've seen some great young players coming through this year. I think next season we will have possibly the second or third best back row group of players in the Pro 14. We have a brilliant two brilliant young lads, Timony and Matty Ray. With Jordy Murphy coming in, Coates will hopefully get over the knee injury. There is signs. We're bringing in a coach who actually coaches forwards, which is what we've needed for so long. But it's this mismanagement and this idea there should be players coming in. We should know who's retiring. We should have reacted to the court case. We should have had more 10s coming in. We brought in Lefano from Australia, who always said he was leaving in January. And we've played the last 4 months of the season with one young fella who's done extremely well, Johnny McPhillips, but 110 at the club again. There's no pro action. It's always what happens, and then we'll react afterwards.
Okay, brilliant. Now we're going to come on to the IRFU and equality amongst the provinces and Leinstergate and Carberry and all that sort of thing. And Mad Doggo, one of you brings up the whole issue about Ian Madigan. Couple more comments. Tommy Johnson gives one in defence of the management team. They have delivered, but only off the pitch, and that ties in, Colin, with what you're saying about the management teams are being seen here, there, and everywhere, the corporate events, etc. But when things got difficult, they were sort of a bit like a submarine, sort of disappeared out of sight. They're almost doing a Theresa May type thing. But on the pitch, yeah. So that then questions, how much of an impact do they have with the coach and the team itself. So it's a really good point there, Tommy. Graham Brown answers a question. Sorry, Graham. Yeah, I'm with you now, buddy. Ulster and Racing. Maybe Ben will come back onto that one after about comparing the two. I think he was just comparing, really, in fairness to Ben, the results. And actually, Racing are in the final now, but actually the results in the group were pretty shocking, really. And how did they manage to get that far? Because that's the nature of the competition. But can you compare the two? I think, Ben, I'll let you answer that one in a second. But I think the whole point is, Graham, is that there's a lot of brilliant results to share from Ulster, and they've come so close. Again, it comes back down to, you've got to stand up and for the 80 minutes of every game and for the 21 rounds or whatever it is, etc., etc., etc. Right, I'll come back to some more questions into some more comments in a minute, lad. But Ben, what's your thoughts? Where does the management team stop and the coaching team start on making sure the team is effective? Is it down to the coaching staff to be badgering the management team to say, look, we need more players in, this is a succession plan, blah 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 blah, or is it down to the management? And let's bring in the IRFU. Is it down to the IRFU to make sure that the provinces are all equally being looked after as part of that succession plan, or is it, Colin says, of being reactive? So where's the problem lying, Ben?
Look, at any professional rugby team, it's about the players that cross the white line. Nobody can play for them. But what the coaching and the management team have to do is set up those players to give them everything they need for 80 minutes to play. This season, I don't think Ulster have got that. Look, Shane Logan, I'm not for a second defending Shane Logan. Shane Logan needs to go. As Colin says, a CEO takes the plaudits when their team's doing well, but absolutely has to step up to the plate when the team's not doing well. But I think for me, in all of this, Shane Logan has thrown Bryn Cunningham a bit under the bus, but for me, Bryn's getting off quite lightly from the fans as well. He's the guy that looks after team management and player recruitment, and all the points that have been raised tonight about expecting people to retire and succession planning. That's Bryn's job within the team. Also have to look at some of the analysis. Niall Malone does the analysis, I believe, for Ulster. Our strength and conditioning coaches, we've missed an inordinate amount of tackles this season on the pitch. We've had games where we've played quite well for 40 minutes, dare say really well for 40 minutes, and then the other 40 minutes has been absolute shambles. It's been like two teams coming out for two different halves, and you have to look at potentially, I don't know, I'm not involved in the team, not inside the dressing room, but is that a strength and conditioning problem? Is that a fitness problem? Is it a tactical problem? Because we've seen in fits and starts that we can play rugby. We've got good players at the team. So I think, I'm not sure what Dwayne Peel does at the club. He was brought in as a coach. I'm not sure what he's added there. Again, I'm not there, so I can't see, but it's not obvious. So in answer to your question, Joe, I think the whole structure has to be around setting up the players to play to the best of their ability. Manchester City have just won the Premier League in England, and I heard a comment the other day where each individual player, now we're talking about millions and millions of pounds here, different world, but each individual player has their own individual strength and conditioning coach. That's how they are set up to win their league. Now, obviously that's a money thing, but it just shows the detail that goes into that kind of thing. And for me, it's not just Logan at Ulster. I said it earlier. I think Hope McFarlane comes in and brings a lot of his own team with him and a lot of his own ideas, and has a real clear out of people that's been there. It might be unfair on me mentioning some of those names because I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but we need change and we need wholesale change. And I think a lot of the coaching and support team need to hold their hands up. It's not working.
Yeah, I'm going to. There's two great comments have been made here. So stay there because I'm going to come back to you before I go on to the guys. Ricky Atkinson, Ricky, thank you. Lost players in key positions with no decent replacements. Recruitment on the whole has been poor, going back all the way back to Humphrey signings before we got to clearing off to England. A typical example of Ulster rugby and the jobs of the boys mentality. Now, I wanted that one to lead into where's Ken Hutchinson's one that Ken brought up. Ken, great question. Any comments on recruitment of NIQ non-Irish qualified players over the past few years, in particular Schalke van der Merwe? That's a really, really good point, Ken, because I'd almost forgotten about Schalke, because I think he must have only played 2 or 3 times since he's been there. Now, my issue is with the whole NIQ stuff must, for me, rightly or wrongly, my viewpoint is that the IRFU is, to coin the great Jeff DeJohns from Harping on Rugby's comment, it's the mothership. And then there's 4 provinces below that. And then those 4 provinces must be looked after by the IRFU, because everything those 4 provinces do leads into the Irish national team. So therefore, there seems to me, and I am a Leinster man through and through, rightly or wrongly, it seems sometimes that if you're in D4 area, then there might be a little bit more favouritism look towards you than if you're out west or if you're up north. What's your thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, I don't want to reopen the whole Rion Pinar situation again.
But that's a prime example of where if you knew that some of those players like Bowen, Trimble, and Marshall and Piatow and all that, were going to be going, why wouldn't you keep Ruin? I mean, he was just central to keeping the whole team together. For me.
Yeah, he was. I mean, we have brought in some good players. I mean, you almost forgot about Schalke van der Merwe. I wish I could forget about Schalke van der Merwe. Potentially the worst signing of all time. He's just, I don't know what anybody saw in him. He's not a prop at all. Marcel Coetzee had 2 very serious injuries. Again, without knowing behind the scenes, could we have assessed him better and seen that coming, or is it just a freak injury that's happened? It's some good signings as well. Louis Ludic, I think, is a vastly underrated player. Love him, gives everything every time he pulls on the shirt for Ulster. But do the IRFU have too much? Well, I mean, we've got a lot of Leinster boys in the squad at the moment. For me as a fan, when somebody pulls on the Ulster shirt, they're an Ulsterman. John Cooney, we know, come from Connacht, Leinsterman. He's an Ulsterman for me now as a fan. All those guys. Robbie Diak, first guy born outside Northern Ireland to get 200 caps for the club. He's an Ulsterman, and I think he said that in his parting tweet. He leaves a proud Ulsterman. So do you dilute it? Potentially. The thing for me is, I think you always get that little bit extra. The guys like Trimble, Bow, Cave, Hendy, guys that dreamed about playing for Ulster as a child. That was their ambition growing up. you're always going to get that little bit extra out. But we're in a professional era now. To open it up, it's the whole Bundyaki for Ireland situation, as stopping an Irish guy. But, he had a great Six Nations, gave us everything for the cause. Everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't we do it? I think we've got to accept that the days are gone now of us seeing a team full of Ulstermen, born and bred. It's professional sport now, and that's the way it's going.
But I think the key point is it's getting the fair, equitable of standard of NIQ across the provinces, and that must purely be an IRFU issue to do. Because Schalke probably wasn't the best come through, but if you're coming in as an NIQ, then you want them to be a marquee player, and there's been a few that haven't.
Yeah, I think what we suffer from as well, if you're comparing us to a Leinster or something like that, is if you're a player coming to play your rugby in Ireland, quite frankly, would you rather play for Leinster or Ulster at the moment? And I don't mean just because of this season. Sure. Leinster are potentially the best team in Europe, the best club side in Europe at the minute. So, James Lowe has been brought in and isn't even playing all the time. He's getting left out because of the NIQ rule. But I'm sure he'd rather be at Leinster than Ulster because he's playing in a European final this weekend.
Absolutely. Christian, thanks, Ben. Yeah, Christian. Academies. There's an issue where there's too many people to get into the Leinster Academy. Okay, Ben, as you said, we're the best team in Europe. Clearly, we're the best team in Europe. And but if you've got players who can't make it into, for example, Leinster Academy, should the IRFU not be looking to take those quality guys and offer them to the other academies? Because that's, again, all fitting towards the Irish national team. What's your thoughts on academies?
So there's 1,000,001 points to talk about. Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, if you haven't got the space, obviously you ship them out amongst the provinces. But having said that, we've talked a lot about the NIQs there. Personally, I'm not bothered where players come from. It's even the same with the international side now. 15 Leinstermen could pull on a green jersey for me. It wouldn't bother me if there was no Ulster players in the squad, at Six Nations time. I really couldn't care less, to be perfectly honest. And that might sound very blunt, but it's about results. It's a results game. If we're going to talk about academies, we're going to talk about players in general. I mean, Rob Atkinson's comment about not recruiting is spot on. I mean, pluck one player, for example, John Afoa, never replaced. He went. And if we're going to talk about this season, I do think that there's been some announcements of retirements later on this season that might perhaps not have been preemptive. It's been made. It's a decision that's been made in the last couple of months after all of the stuff that's went on this season. Having said that, there is obviously, I think, maybe one or two that there would have been, the coaches and the staff would have been told at the start of the season. So, there was room there. I mean, for example, if we're going to talk about the court case, Barry Jackson, they knew he wasn't going to play this season. They knew they only had Leif Furtado until a certain point. It's an absolute mess. It's a total mess. And, we talked about earlier on there about how, Logan's performed off the pitch. I remember the first time going to Ravenhill, or Kingspan, whatever you want to call it. And I remember getting there, and I remember this is a brilliant, ground, lovely setup, fantastic facilities. It's a real. When you go to Ravenhill, it's not just the game. There's so many other things going on there. The fans can meet some of the players who won't be playing that night, etc. But I don't go to watch rugby for that. I go to see my team win. And if you look at the likes of, for example, Newcastle Falcons, obviously, my hometown club. Look at the Falcons this year. They've came fourth in the Premiership. They've got a modest ground of 10,000. It's a ground that where you go, you don't get all this extra rigmarole of, the food court and all that stuff, the market stalls and what have you. You get your rugby match, and that's it. Simple. And Logan can say all that he wants about performing, performing off the pitch and having world-class facilities. It doesn't matter. And, when we talk about financial budgets and stuff like that, yeah, I can imagine that Leinster and Munster probably do have more money thrown at them. Connacht don't. And as I was touching on earlier on, Connacht won it. The whole thing about the IRFU, for me, is that I think fans are really starting to love to blame the IRFU for everything that goes wrong. And in the case of Ruben Pienaar, yeah, they were wrong. I agree. You should still be there. But having said that, it's just we can't keep saying, it's like, oh well, we'll just throw the IRFU under the bus at every opportunity. Well, that's fine, but there's clearly problems at Ulster Rugby, because if the IRFU aren't doing as much at Connacht, or for example as much as Munster, then why aren't we seeing problems there as well? Why haven't they had what's possibly in the worst season for God knows how long? So I just think there's a lot of stuff thrown on the bus. Tommy Johnson's comment about John Cooney, he's been fantastic this season again. Really, really good player. He's came in and filled that void well. But again, it's I like John Cooney. Don't get me wrong. He's not of Pienaar's quality, and that's the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. That is the truth. And have I got much optimism for next season? Very little. Very little.
Yeah, great points, mate. And actually makes me think about something else. But you raise a fair point. Maybe everybody has been too harsh on the IRFU. I think one of the problems with the IRFU, lads, is that we don't see the strategic plan. I like to see a strategic plan for an organisation, which then says what it's going to do to its subcomponent parts and how it's going to help it. And then to make sure that each of those subcomponent parts are going to get the equal amount of help and support. And I don't see that because I can't find to read the plan anywhere, because there isn't one at the moment. But you bring up some great points there. And yeah, Tommy does raise similar points. Rob Kerry raises a really good one that you've just led right into. When we won the thanks, Rob, for this. When we won the European Cup in '99, Club Ulster was the ethos. Everybody played for the shirt. All efforts, for the club. Even going to the games was a night out. We went early, stayed till we were kicked out. Since then, Club Ulster has been diluted almost to nothing. Even the CEO and his team do not put Ulster first. The IRFU is far too dominant. Interesting take on that one. This is evidence. Even in the way Logan has set up Ulster, everything is franchised out, nothing's in-house, all the profits are leaving the club, people no longer make it a night out as the prices are top dollar and there's no atmosphere. Maybe Ben was right. That's one of the indicative points of indicative sides of professional rugby now, is that these things do change, and in Ireland especially, we're used to more of our family type feel, and we don't have that. Akin to what Christian was saying about Newcastle. Gareth Jameson, thank you. Is it fair to consider the Club Ireland ethos of D4 as handicapping Ulster? Well, we have covered that, and I need to move on because this is great, but we haven't got off the questions at the moment, and I want to bring Colin on something. But lads, keep the comments coming through. Tommy Johnson, Tommy. John Cooney will forever be an Ulsterman after player of the season loss. I think Cooney and McPhillips have been the two players for Ulster for me this year, but they've been undershadowed in lots of ways because of things that have been going on. Peter Bird, what are our thoughts on Will Addison coming in? Will Addison's coming in from Sale Sharks. Colin, what's your thoughts on Will Addison coming in?
Surprise, surprise. He picked up an injury in Saturday, playing for Sale. Hamstring gone. I think it's a regular occurrence, unfortunately. He looks a good player, good utility player, which isn't a bad thing. But we don't want another injured player. we just can't afford. We do seem to sign injured players and players with histories of injury records. Goes back to what the boys have been saying. Who does the research? Who's looking into who we're signing? A utility back, all well and good, but not one who's not going to play many games in the season. You go back to Schalke van der Merwe, who on record never played more than 10 games for any club he was at in a season, and we sign him. Who's looking at the injury record? It's a worry, but I think Addison could be a good signing if he stays fit, and it's always a big if with Ulster.
Yeah, I hope he does, because I actually watched him play a couple of times, and I quite like him. And I think having that capability of a winger fullback and a centre as well gives it a little bit more fluidity. So I am a Will Addison fan, so I think that will be good. Okay, let's get back to. I need to open my agenda again, because I've forgotten absolutely where we are. Ulster DC. DC stands for Da Capo, a new beginning. Okay, so with losing the senior players, we've gone through Charles Piatow, Robbie Dyack, Andy Trimble, Paul Marshall, who else we got? Tommy Bowe, obviously losing Jackson and Olding as well. Rodney RU, regardless of what people's thoughts on there. That's a whole plethora of people that are going. Again, coming in, Marty Moore, the former Leinster, Ireland and current Wasp prop, who I'm a big fan of personally. Geordie Murphy, absolutely top draw back row play with Leinster. Will Addison from Sale Sharks. Plus potential one season fly half from Leinster, the Joey Carberry situation. Where are we at? I mean, this all leads us, lads, into Ben's great line of Leinstergate. So Leinstergate and Ulster's new number 10. Okay, well, there's still much comment about Brian O'Driscoll's claiming that it is a basket case, Ben, do we think that Ulster should take Carberry? Do we think it's the right thing to do for Irish rugby and for Carberry and for Ulster? Looking from an Irish point of view, even if you take him for a season, that helps him out, gives him game time, helps you out, etc., etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Two different answers depending on what top I've got on or what hat I've got on. Ireland need Joey to be playing rugby, whether that's at Ulster or Munster. He could go to Munster as well and play 10. I believe, I haven't checked the stats, but he's started twice at 10 this season for Leinster. With the loss of Paddy Jackson, we have a World Cup next year. Your number 2, your backup 10 must be playing rugby and must be playing in the top high-pressure games. Joey Carberry is no doubt a fantastically talented footballer, but the question that's levelled at Joey is his game management, and it's his game management in big, high-pressure situations, and he needs to be playing rugby for a top-level side. Brian O'Driscoll actually this week, or at tail end of last week, after Joey was photographed in a coffee shop with Joe Smith, actually said the comment, if Joe Smith's saying go to Ulster, I'd be listening to him. So he's kind of went full circle on that. And Keith Wood also said this week he just needs to be playing 10 somewhere. So with my Ireland hat on, Joey Carberry should leave Leinster to be playing 10. With my Ulster hat on, I'm excited for next season. I think it is going to be a rebuilding season. I don't think we're not going to win the Pro 14 or the European Cup next season or anything like that. But I think we need to build. And I think if we were to bring Joey in, we either sign him and he becomes an Ulster player. But I don't like this idea of in on a loan or something like that. We need to build, and we can't build around somebody who's then, going to bugger off back to Leinster. That's not good enough for me. I would rather see somebody with much more experience than Joey come in. I mean, maybe going to contradict myself here, but, Lealiafano comes back in and McPhillips can play underneath somebody who has all that experience and can be brought on. But bringing Joey in, no doubt he'd play well for Ulster. Don't get me wrong. He's, like I said, he's a great player, but I don't think it's the right long-term option for Ulster. I would rather, out of the two, Ross Byrne came, again, if he was staying. If he was coming to stay to be an Ulster player, but I really don't like the idea of this short-term loan signing.
Yeah, the issue I've got is that I think you need to have somebody longer term. While Leinster are still chasing two fronts every single year, Europe and the Pro 14. Or it's likely to become Pro 18 at some point with the South Africans joining us. That's another night. I think that it becomes almost a band-aid, a stick and plaster type effect. So I get what you're saying, and therefore Ross Byrne going up for the longer duration. I mean, look what it's done for John Cooney. absolutely made him rather than just going up for a short period of time. I think the problem with Joey Carberry is that Joe Schmidt wants him as the understudy to JS10. But Leinster are playing him the back row. I mean, the only time, as far as I'm concerned, the only time that Carberry played at 10 this year was against Treviso. That was the first time Treviso that he played 10 for Leinster this year, and we all know what happened against Treviso. So I think potentially there's a Leinster thing to sort out with the IRFU first and foremost, as opposed to trying to throw the problem up to Ulster. And I would be of the same opinion that, you know, if you're going to throw somebody up there, make it Ross Ben and do it longer term. Colin, Leinstergate, you're number 10. What do you think? What is the score? Leave the Leinster boys and find somebody else? Or tell me about Mad Dog Madigan. Why didn't you bring him back?
Madigan would be a better choice all around than either of the two Leinster boys, in my opinion. Money-wise, it may be a hard one. Does he want to prove himself now he's got promoted with Bristol? Does he want to stay there? The other feeling is, will he come back to Ireland and be understudy to JS10? Does he want to come back to Ireland and be number one? My worry about Carberry, especially, is he's had it easy. This is no disrespect to the young lad, but he's had it easy. He slipped in there into the Ireland squad without really ever having to do anything. He's got great feet. He's exciting to watch. Can he run a match? Can he play 10? We just don't know, and that's my worry. And if he comes up to Ulster next season, he's going to come in place of Johnny McPhillips, who's become a bit of a fan favourite in a short spell. Yep. A lot of Ulster fans don't want Carberry. The pressure's going to be on. I'm not sure Joey Carberry can handle pressure, and that would be my concern. He's possibly going to be a great number 10 for Ireland in the future. He's not there at the moment. His only worry is because we're desperate. We're so stuck for 10s that we don't have a backup. With Paddy gone, there is no backup. That's my worry with Carberry. Ross Byrne, and good player, has done well for Leinster this year, but again, is he so much better than McPhillips? I'm not overly sure. Madigan would be a great player to get back in for Ireland, never mind Ulster. But I think if Madigan come back to Ulster, Connacht, Munster, wherever, I think he'd be number 2 to Saxon straight away. I think Carberry would be, and that's probably Joey's problem. If he says no to Joe Schmidt at this point, Joe doesn't often forgive. Joe has a long memory of players who don't do exactly what Joe wants them to do. And there's been a few who's went by the wayside and haven't worn Ireland shirt again. So I think Joey is in a predicament in that if he doesn't do what the Irish management want, where does that leave his international career?
You absolutely spot on. And I think that Mark Hunter is saying what everybody else is really thinking and saying. I'd rather have someone at 10 who wants to play for Ulster and not someone being forced to do so. I spoke to Joey after Leinster versus Ulster game RDS, and there was more chance of him going to the moon than to Ravenhill. Look, as an outsider point of view, I think, you know, why didn't you bring Mad Dog in and leave Carberry as the backup 15 at Leinster? Because Rob Carney is having a bit of an Indian summer, but how long will that last? Absolutely superb. But you know, if Leo and Leinster want Carberry at fullback, then keep him as fullback, and he becomes a natural progressor. Then, you know, some would say for the Island squad to Rob Carney, and then you've got the problem and bring Mad Dog in, but that hasn't that hasn't been the case, and you know, I'm not quite sure. Connor White, there you go. I was throwing something else in. Christian Ross, I'll pick you up there because you can answer this question to Connor White. Connor, good evening. Thank you for your question. Why not someone like Danny Cipriani? Have we missed the boat, Christian, on not thinking about somebody else completely?
Because he's overrated, that's why. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't understand why a lot of fans are so. Well, obviously, I mean, Mark says that he doesn't think it's going to happen, which is fair enough. He's a man in the know. No, but you know, why not bring someone like Carberry in? You know, Mark said there, I'd rather have someone at 10 who wants to play for Ulster and not someone being forced to do so. Who wants to play for Ulster at the minute? I've already said it's a you know, the club at the minute. It's just it's almost a poison chalice, honestly. I mean. With Joey Carberry, aside from Joey Carberry, who really is able to be brought in at the current point in time of actual decent quality? Who would want to sign? There's been no rumours in the last couple of months. There's been nothing said, and I think that's probably, very, very telling in the fact that, if we haven't planned. When we were talking about O'Driscoll earlier on, and how he's called Ulster a basket case, and how he's went full circle on Twitter. He was right. One of my friends actually pointed out on Twitter that the reason why people didn't like Brian O'Driscoll saying what he did is because he's a Leinster man. That's why. I think people couldn't take the fact that a Leinster man had hit it so well on the head, hit the nail on the head, that he was bang on. And it just hurt. It hurt coming from Brian O'Driscoll. It really, really did. Collins just said there, Cipriani is better than any 10 we have at the moment is available. Fair enough. But would we be able to bring him in? And would he want to join? No? Why would he, honestly?
I would. I get Connor's point, and I get your point. Ben Slater, answer that one, then also answer to me, what's happening with your academy? Where's all the youngsters coming through? We've had a couple of comments from people coming through here talking about we need to develop our own youngsters. Yeah, you do. Where are they? We hear about the Leinster Academy. What's happening with Ulster?
So firstly, I think the 10 situation is really down to timing. There's nothing we can do about it. There's a World Cup next year, and everyone's signed up, and all the top 10s in the world are all signed up, and nobody's going to move now just before a World Cup. So we're kind of hamstrung by that, which is just unfortunate timing. The academy, Timoney, Matty Ray, McPhillips coming through, Aaron Cairns. There is people coming through. Like, they're not bursting onto the scene the way Jordan Larmour's bursting onto the scene or Joey Carberry burst onto the scene. Again, going back to Ulster, the brand, and Logan, there's no reason why we shouldn't be producing academy players. We've world-class facilities now at Kingspan Stadium. It opens up, and I know we're kind of maybe not got the time for it, but it opens up the wider issue of rugby in Ulster below Ulster, and the club game in Ulster, the school game in Ulster. I think, again, comparing it to Leinster's academy is not fair. There's a lot more people to pick from the Leinster academy. There's a much bigger pool of rugby players to pick from. But yeah, look, the academy is a difficult one. They're just not coming through at the rate we need them to come through at the minute, and it's highlighted by the fact that we do need them through at the minute. So it's just exacerbating the problem.
Okay, I got to throw this one up because it's been a hot bank holiday, so I'm gathering that not all of us have been working. Jamie Beveridge, let's be honest, Connacht are probably the best team in Ireland at the moment, and Edinburgh are going to win the Champions Cup on the Cockerel. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that one. That one's made me giggle, but we like to have that sort of input. Okay, Colin. What are your marquee signings? I can't find anything anywhere which is saying, who your forthcoming NIQ players are going to be. I mean, we talked about Schalk van der Merwe before, still injured as far as I'm aware. Have you got anything on the cards coming through that you're aware of?
That is the big question, Ben, that we know nothing about at the moment. Schalke is signed, I believe, for next season also, but I think we're all praying desperately that somehow we manage to wriggle out of that contract and certainly free up one place. Charles Piatow is obviously heading back across the water to Bristol. It is the Ulster way to sign a flashy back and big money. That is what we like to do. I think we'd much rather prefer 2 or 3 props and a couple of second rows. It would be much better spent, the money. And perhaps if we didn't actually go for the big marquee signing and actually went for 3 or 4 very good players, as opposed to the flashy 500 grand a year Charles Piatows, we might actually improve the squad. And hopefully the new coach coming in, being a forwards coach, that he might actually look at the squad and see where the money would be better spent. Obviously, the 10 has to come from somewhere. The IRFU are trying their best to sort that one out, to annoy Leinster around ourselves, probably. The 10 will have to come. I think we need another 9 with Paul Marshall going, although we have a couple of young lads coming through the academy. It's a big ask for them, especially if John Cooney ends up in an Ireland squad and we lose him for international matches. But where the big money signings are coming from, we just don't know. But I would actually be happy if we didn't go down that route for once. But being Ulster, we probably will. We'll probably find a fullback or a winger who we can sign for $500,000 and forget about the rest of the squad. And that's possibly where our problem has been: too much emphasis on the big money signing as opposed to sorting out the squad. We need at least one second row. We need a couple of props. Back row, we're sort of sorted. Across the back line, we're okay. The retirees, if we're completely honest, not surprising, and none of them really on current form are going to be a big miss. Sorry to all the Tommy Bowe fans and Andrew Trimble fans, but they aren't the players they were a few years ago. Andrew Trimble has struggled to get anywhere near the squad this year. Tommy Bowe has come in off late as a bit of a swan song. Piatau is the one that would be sorely missed, although his mind seems to have been in Bristol for most of the past season. So where the big money comes, we don't know. I think a lot is going to depend on the Carberry/Ross Burns situation. I think it's probably not helping Ulster as a whole for that to be held up. It's probably not helping Leinster on the week after European Cup final to have uncertainty around one of their players either. So on this occasion, I think I would blame the IRFU. They didn't really need to go public with it as they have done. And certainly it seems to become the hot potato of Irish rugby. I think that needs to be sorted out. And once that's sorted out, new coach coming in, we're hopeful that there will be some signings, but I'd like to see them up front as opposed to another flashy back.
I get that completely. And I was just scrolling back. I was listening to everything you were saying there, and a lot of it resonated. I'm a huge fan of taking a lot of homegrown talent and taking some mid-range players, but making them into something special. And I think your coach does that. But I'd come across, it was about 15 or 20 comments ago, but Rob Kerry hit it on the head for me. I've been to Exeter. Exeter, one of my favourite teams, although it was bloody freezing when I went there a couple of years ago in the Heineken Cup in the January, let me tell you, and I've forgotten my gloves. Been to Exeter, and the revenues are kept in-house and used to fund the playing squad. They also have no marquee players being paid big bucks, hence there's a squad size, so the squad size is much bigger. And again, that's absolutely spot on for me. And also, it also comes down to Rob Baxter building a team around some great players and some reasonable players. Ben, thoughts on that? Is that the way Ulster should be going?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
almost what Newcastle have done it to a certain degree.
Yeah, but I think, a lot of the comments you see online and stuff is that what people are looking for is, how do Ulster get themselves in a position to win a competition next season? And I don't think that's realistic. This is a rebuilding phase, and Exeter went through that. Exeter didn't all of a sudden turn around. They built a team, they got the players in, they built that ethos, and I think that's what Ulster have to do next season. As I say, I think next season or the coming seasons are an exciting time for Ulster because there will be a lot of change, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Good man. It's not going to happen overnight, and I think that's the whole thing. Okay, that brings us on very quickly because we're going to have to wrap up because we've been over an hour already, and this is brilliant, but there's a danger that we could go on for another 3 hours here, guys. Dan McFarlane coming in. Christian Ross, thoughts on Dan McFarlane coming in? Ex-Connacht player, prop, therefore he's a good man. Is he going to be a great addition? Is he what Ulster need?
Doesn't fill me with excitement, to be honest, mainly due to the fact that he's got no experience coaching at the highest level. I feel like he's a bit of a guinea pig, really. See how he sort of does. From what I've seen, a lot of comments have said a lot, especially from the Scottish contingent, that he is a really, really capable coach. But I think the elephant in the room needs to be addressed is when are we actually getting him? Because the rumour is that he's supposedly in contract with the SRU until January. And the SRU are supposedly going to give him gardening leave, and then he is going to join Ulster in the summer. But again, it just shows you how clinically inept everyone is at the top of Ulster Rugby. I think it was really built up as well. The final game of the season on the Ulster Rugby coverage. They were saying, "Oh, we're going to bring a big coach," and I think everyone was like, "Oh, it's going to be someone really exciting." Obviously, Jim Maunder from Northampton was thrown around, or from Northampton. Yeah, like I say, it doesn't fill me with excitement. If he gets the job done, credit to him. But I'm not gonna stay at the Bloke actually before he's had a chance. So that would be my opinion on it.
Okay, and that's why we want differences of opinion. But Ben,
the same. I'm not going to.
Bear in mind that he was both forward and an assistant coach with Connacht. He's been the Ireland under 20, the emerging Ireland, the Wolfhounds, Glasgow Warriors. He's an assistant coach of Scotland now. Do you agree with what Christian's saying? Because I think there's some pedigree there for me personally.
Yeah, I think he's certainly got the pedigree. He's certainly been around a lot of great coaches in his career. He's stepping up now to take a head coach job, which he is a step up for him. But everyone's got to take that step at some point. I think for me, living in Scotland, Gregor Townsend rates him really, really highly. And they have felt it as a real loss to that Warriors in Scotland setup, which is why they're so keen to hold on to him for his notice period and his gardening leave. So, yeah, look, I didn't know an awful lot about Dan McFarland, I'll be honest with you, before, and I've had to read up on it now. Good luck to him. I'm kind of glad it is somebody left field that's come out. I think the situation's exactly the same, like I said, with the 10 before the World Cup. Unless it was already a free agent coach, I don't think we were going to prize anyone from anywhere else to do this. So proof's in the pudding. It's all to play for next season. Okay,
yeah, I totally agree. So moving on then to the second but last question, 2018-19 season, how will it go? Colin, what's your thoughts briefly on where you see the strengths and weaknesses next season?
With the rumour being that the Champions League final and the Champions Cup final next year is in Celtic Park, I think all Ulster fans look forward to lifting the European Cup at Celtic Park next season. That's slightly tongue-in-cheek of me, but I think, as Ben said, it will be a rebuild next year. We're not going to set the world alight, but I really think if this Osprey match is massive. I think this Champions Cup qualifier is massive. Like it or lump it probably affects who we can bring in some ways as well. Playing Champions Cup rugby is probably where the better players want to be. We have some exciting young players coming through who have got experience this year who can only get better. Nick Timoney, for all us Ireland fans, Nick Timoney is one to watch. I truly believe that he will break through, certainly after the World Cup. We're very strong back row before the World Cup, but he will certainly break through. There's some good, exciting players coming through. What happens with 10 is massive. The signings are massive, and how our new coach adapts is massive. So there's lots of ifs and buts, but Ulster fans aren't known for their optimism. It's not a trait that we often bring, but I feel we can possibly do something. The big thing for me with the new coach, experienced or not, is what he's done in previous clubs as a forwards coach. That Glasgow team that destroyed Munster in the final at Ravenhill a couple of years ago, brilliant up front. They were brilliant in the pack. And if we can bring something of that to Ulster, we all know we can score tries, we can run the ball in from anywhere. We can't hold the ball in the forwards, we can't win a line out, we can't win a scrum, and that's really where we need looked at. So if the coach can bring something of that, I think we can have a positive season. What will be positive? A decent effort in Europe next season, hopefully the Champions Cup, and making the playoffs in the Pro 14 or 16, 17, whatever it may be, by the time we get to next season. I think that would be a decent effort. I think Ulster fans just want to see us competing. And following Neil Best's little tweet this afternoon, a lot of Ulster fans might also be getting their way with Mr. Logan Simney on his way. And there's the rumours of an ex-player coming in. So hopefully the fan base can unite behind the team, no matter about what's going on off the pitch. And we have to hold our heads up. We have to keep going. It's been a struggle couple of years, but you don't support a team just because they win. and we need
absolutely.
to.
Good man. Yeah, absolutely spot on. Christian Ross, thoughts on next season, and of course, as Colin rightly comes out, you've got a playoff. Also got a playoff yet against the Ospreys for a European place. Thoughts, Kidder?
Well, I think it would be interesting if we didn't win the playoff. To be honest, maybe a season without Champions Cup would be as something that could actually potentially be good, and give us a chance to actually take a good hard look at ourselves. I don't think there's any chance for winning any silverware next season. It's a massive rebuilding job, and credit to Dan McFarlane for just taking on the challenge because he's going to need a lot about him, I think, to sort out the club the way it is at the moment. In terms of rebuilding as well, players like Matt Phillips, and the problem is that it could be 3 or 4 seasons before we actually see them at what would be a relatively high standard. I'm not massively optimistic that we'll even make the playoffs next year. That's just because I'm a grumpy old sod, I think. But we'll see what happens. But I think if McFarlane doesn't come in at the time, if he doesn't come in summer and he does end up having to come in January, we might as well just write the season off again. Because somebody mentioned there earlier on, is he going? It was Oscar Traynor. He said, if he doesn't arrive till January, it's going to be a disaster. The rebuilding process will drag on. How did he even get a feel of the club and the academy? Well, that's spot on. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you might as well not bother employing him until the following season. So yeah, credit to him for taking on the task. But yeah, I think it'll be another long hard slog next year.
Okay, cool. Ben Slater finishes off with 2018, the playoffs. Where do you think Ulster will be this time next year?
In a better place than we are just now. I don't think that's going to be too difficult. I hope to see new blood in the boardroom, new blood on the pitch. We need to play our youngsters. We need to give them game time. We need to trust in them. Somebody famously said in another sport, you win nothing with kids. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to win, but I think we've got some good kids and we need to play them. We need to get our props sorted. It's a big problem with Ulster at the minute is props. And that's probably one of the reasons why they're pushing Joey into Ulster, because it frees up an NIQ spot for the pack rather than using an NIQ spot at 10. I think as a fan base, we need to move on from this season and everything that's happened off the pitch. It's gone now. It's happened. We move forward. We unite as a fan base and get behind it. I hadn't seen that tweet, Colin. I hope it's true. If Logan is out, we need to get people to buy tickets. The guys that pull on the jersey are what needs our support, not a board or not anything else to do with it. It's the guys that pull on the jersey. So unfortunately, I don't live in the country, so I don't have a season ticket, but hopefully the fans do get behind the team and cheer them on for a good season next season.
Good man. And that's tied me in with, sorry you didn't get through all of the comments there, guys, but we do need to wrap it up. But there was 2 there, and I've scrolled right the way back down to something you just said there, Ben, which ties in Ryan Wilson's comment. Less of the big 3 Belfast schools in the academy and widening the search. Again, there's a little bit from one let's believe, of that. Certain schools go to, within Dublin, within the Leinster area, are the ones that feed. Whereas maybe we should be, and if the same for the in top 3 schools in sort of Belfast type thing, always being the ones that feed through them. Maybe we should be widening that field as well. To be able to look. I know in the UK, for example, they have an Irish exile system where they look, if you want to be playing for Ireland or for Irish clubs, they're looking for people out there. So maybe there needs to be more of that, not in the UK, but here across the island of Ireland, across all 4 provinces. So Ryan Wilson, great point then. Thanks very much for that. And I'll finish with this one from Ken Hutchinson. I've been a season ticket holder since they were introduced until the season. I didn't renew at the start of the season for a number of reasons, particularly the ruin Pinar debacle. It's looking very likely that quite a few supporters are not going to renew for next season unless Logan does the decent thing. Well, I hope that you change your mind, Ken. because I thoroughly enjoy going up to Ravenhill at Kingspan, and I love the crack. I live up there on 3 different occasions in the last 30 odd years, and I have a really soft spot for the province and for the people there, and I think the support is one of the things that really makes Ulster Rugby. It is the fans for me, and as a true blue Leinster man, it is the fans that really make, stand up for the Ulster man, stand up for the Ulster woman, we should be saying as well, and it's that passion and that drive. So I understand it's frustrating for people now, but as an outsider, Jesus, boys and girls, stand up and support your team. Ben, did you want to say something, brother?
Nope, sorry, I was just taking my glasses off.
Okay, right, lads, listen, it's been absolutely, it'll always be Ravenhill, home of Ulster Rugby, a bit like Lansdowne, Rob Kelly. Right, so, and finally, lads, we've been on for 1 hour 20. There was loads more things that we could have discussed, but, we could have gone on for another 3 hours. Look, we've thrown this one together, and I think it's really good because I hadn't seen anything that anybody had come together to speak about. I've just seen lots and lots of comments and thoughts of things on a number of different forums. So I hope that everybody has enjoyed it. We seem to have a lot of viewers on. Obviously, keep resharing this one on and resharing the 3 Blokes a Ball and Bud page. And we hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for everybody who's reacted, commented, and taken the time on a bank holiday Monday evening to join us. Look, whether it's the IRFU, whether it's Logan and Cunningham, whether it's some of the players, whether it's just cyclical time of change where we go up, we go down, we go up, we go down. The thing is, you stand by your team, you stand by your province in good times and in bad, and that's one of the things I would ask you to do. I'd like to thank everybody again, like I say, who watched, commented, and took the time to join us tonight. Mr. Christian Ross.
Thanks. I'll be more happy
and Ben Sleater. Thank you, gentlemen. Just stay on there once we finish, have a quick chat. But thanks very much, guys, for taking your time. It's been really insightful, and I think that, look, nobody has all the answers, and they're never going to have all the answers. But that's one of the great things that we come on and we discuss it. So we'll be back on Thursday. At normal time, and this Thursday, 9 p.m, 2100 hours, we will be looking at, it's a busy week leading up to the European finals, but this Thursday at 9 o'clock, we'll be looking at all things English rugby, and we'll have 3 new panelists on Thursday. So it's the third of the 4. We've done Scottish rugby, we've done Welsh rugby last week, which was exciting, and we're doing English rugby this Thursday. So it's 9 p.m, so join us then. And then on Friday at 8 p.m, 2000 hours, we've got the Challenge Cup final in Bilbao between Cardiff Blues, a surprise for me this season, and Gloucester. And then the main event, the Champions Cup final from Bilbao at 16:45 hours, 4:45 p.m. British Summer Time on Saturday. Leinster bidding to seek a record equaling 4th European win against top French outfit Racing 92, who are looking to win their first. Members of the 3 Blokes, a Ball and Bod team, will be at the Horseshoe House Bar and Restaurant on Merrion Road, Ballsbridge. We've got a space in the Aviva Lounge. We've booked that for 20 people. I'll be sticking a couple of posts up tomorrow. So the first 20 people who want to come, either comment on this or on the post tomorrow, and want to come and join us at the Horseshoe House Bar on Merrion Road in Ballsbridge on Sunday. 20 people in the Aviva Lounge. Then come and join us on that. And thank you to our own panelist Neil Keegan for sorting that out. So until Thursday, have a great week, and have a safe one. And whatever you're doing, look after yourselves and your family ones. So until Thursday, the show, stay safe. Good of me and Malagot. Agus Slangafol.